Welcome to another video with the Electric Trucker. Today we are not talking about electric trucks but electric cars, specifically about my Tesla Model Y, because I am in the process of replacing it with another electric car. Before it's gone, I wanted to show you the modifications I made over the years. The Model Y has the standard white exterior, but it looks a bit awkward compared to the Model 3. Not exactly the best proportions. So I wrapped the roof rails and side mirrors in black. Combined with the black glass roof, this gives the car a slightly lower, sleeker, and more elegant appearance. And I swapped out the wheel covers, which fit well with the off-road look I was going for. Plus, they're more aerodynamic. They still have some air vents for the brakes, but reduce energy consumption compared to the stock covers. But the biggest change is definitely the roof tent with integrated solar panels. I'll get into that in a moment, but first let's take a look inside the car. Since this is my main workspace and where I spend most of my time, I built a custom table. You can buy similar ones as accessories, but it's really just a wooden board that folds in the middle. I also 3D printed a small stand for my laptop so the screen is at perfect viewing height. Add a mouse and keyboard, and the mobile office is complete. I even put a small plant in there for a cozy touch. And this is the bedroom of my Tesla. I completely stripped out the back and built a small sleeping area on the right side where I can comfortably lie down. On the left, I installed a small cabinet with storage compartments. I also added a foldable hanging organizer which served as my wardrobe. It was super practical. And I made sure to keep the underfloor storage usable by creating a double floor with removable compartments. I've already emptied everything out, but before it was packed with gear. And I fit just fine without having to move the front seats forward. It's crazy how much storage space this car has. Behind the driver's seat, I even had an additional water tank. And here, I stored my food, but you could easily install a fridge box instead. I never really felt the need for one, but there is plenty of space for everything. For privacy, I used window covers in the back. But since Teslas have frameless windows, you have to insert them after closing the door, which was a bit tricky. I also completely covered the rear window, and with all the cameras, it was never an issue. One thing I deliberately chose not to do was cover the windshield or front windows. If you do that, it's obvious that someone is inside. I liked the idea of stealth camping, where people wouldn't even realize I was sleeping in there. So I only covered the rear windows. I used a curtain up front that attached to the glass roof with suction cups, making it impossible to tell someone was inside. On the right side behind the passenger seat, I installed a small EcoFlow battery with a capacity of 2 kilowatt hours. I used this as a backup storage unit. But the real highlight of my setup is this. When you fold the bed to the side, you can lift a panel to reveal a small folding bike. If the car battery was low, I could still keep moving. This turned out to be super useful when the car was charging or I just wanted to get around by bike. It's an old model from the 70s or 80s with a really clever folding mechanism. Unlike most folding bikes that fold in the middle, this one collapses into itself, making it incredibly compact. But a true camper needs a kitchen. You want to be self-sufficient and always able to cook fresh meals. And since the Tesla's Frunk is perfect for it, I installed a small kitchen there, the Magic Frunk. On the left, you've got a sink, and on the right, an induction cooktop. But since my car is usually pretty dirty, I made it so the whole setup can fold outward. The kitchen matches the Tesla's white exterior and has the perfect standing height. On the left, there's a small sink with a faucet that can be turned on and even extended quite far. Super practical for washing your hair or cleaning your dog. Honestly, I can't imagine my car without a kitchen anymore. On the right, there's the induction cooktop, and both fresh and gray water tanks are built in. For power, I tapped into the Frunk's lighting and built a small adapter for it. The pump doesn't run for long and barely consumes any energy. The only thing I still have to do is run a small extension cable outside to the EcoFlow battery when using the induction cooktop. I could have wired it internally, but that was too much effort, and honestly, it's not a big deal. The first version of my kitchen actually had a gas cooktop, making it fully self-sufficient. And I think the name Magic Frunk is very fitting, because it really is magic. Every time you open it in a parking lot, people come over to check it out. It's an absolute highlight. Everyone loves it and gets super excited about it. But the most exciting and complex part of the entire build was the solar system. The foundation of my solar setup is my rooftop tent, which is mounted on standard roof racks and can be folded up. On top of that, I designed an additional box to house the solar panels. There's a 375-watt peak solar panel mounted on top, which is always angled towards the sun. That means it's generating power whether the tent is open or closed. There are also 2 additional panels on the sides. These can be folded out and are secured with latches. During driving, they stay locked in place without any issues. But when parked, I can unfold them for extra solar coverage. Now you know why my Tesla is called Pegasus, because it can unfold its solar wings. The total solar capacity is around 1,100 watts peak, and since the panels are mounted at a good height, there's no risk of people bumping into them. But because they are lightweight, they are sensitive to wind. The tricky part was laying the cables so they wouldn't get in the way when folding the panels. The wiring had to be just the right length and properly secured. You can see how the cables run along the roof, down the side of the tent, and into the vehicle's interior, making them almost invisible. Since the panels are folded in when I'm driving, they could shade each other, reducing efficiency. That's why I installed a switch that lets me toggle between single-panel mode and three-panel mode. But the challenge was that my EcoFlow battery only accepts a maximum input voltage of 100 volts, while each panel produces about 40 volts. To solve this, I added a DC-DC converter that steps down the voltage from 120 volts to under 100 volts. This secondary solar controller is programmable and can output up to 96 volts, which is perfect for my setup. When running one panel, it bypasses the converter and sends power straight to the battery. But with three panels, the converter steps in to regulate the voltage before feeding the battery. And it works surprisingly well. When the sun is shining, I can charge the battery with up to 800 watts. That limit isn't due to the solar panels, but because of the battery. I could have made things easier by using the EcoFlow Delta Pro, which has more storage capacity, supports higher input voltage, and can handle more solar power. But I didn't want to install such a massive battery. This one is already big enough. With this setup, I can store 2 kilowatt hours of energy, and now comes the best part, using that power to drive. I built a flat cable that plugs in right here, and just like that, I can charge the Tesla. And it looks absolutely hilarious, like the Tesla is charging itself. I charge at 5 to 6 amps, single phase, from the EcoFlow battery into the Tesla. Of course, it's not a continuous process. First, I charge the 2 kilowatt hour battery with 800 watts, which takes about 3 hours. Then I transfer those 2 kilowatt hours into the Tesla, which gives me around 10 kilometers or 6 miles of range. Since the car sits in the sun for 10 hours a day, the battery goes through multiple charge cycles, meaning I have to switch back and forth several times. That's why I installed a hotspot. From home or even the office, I could check if the battery was full, activate the charge transfer, and send the power to the Tesla. I was able to get about 25 kilometers or 15 miles of solar-powered range per day. And that's a solid proof of concept that solar-powered cars can make sense if they sit in the sun all day. But it really depends on your location. In rural areas or open spaces like this, solar cars are totally practical. But in cities, it gets tricky. There are trees, buildings, and parked vans that create shade, making solar charging unreliable. That's why I wanted to test this in real life and see if it actually works. It would be even better if the solar panels could feed directly into the high-voltage battery. That would be much more efficient than my setup. The biggest downside? Well, as you can see, it's not exactly aerodynamic. I already had the rooftop tent with me, so the extra consumption was factored in anyway, but if you were carrying it only for the solar panels, it wouldn't make sense at all. I only left it on because I had nowhere else to store it. Efficiency is super important, and that's something that always bugged me about the solar car from Sono Motors. Their concept was cool, but no one really talked about energy consumption. If you're putting in all this effort and money to generate solar power, you need to use it efficiently. I took this setup to Africa, to Morocco, and it was a dream there. I had to realign the Tesla multiple times a day to face the sun, but the solar power just kept flowing. But in Germany, with cold temperatures and cloudy weather, it's a different story. The EcoFlow battery I installed doesn't even turn on in sub-zero temperatures. It handled heat pretty well since it has internal cooling, but when I pulled 10 amps, it sometimes overheated and shut off. But I really wanted to show you this because projects like these teach you so much. You only truly learn when you apply things in practice. Before this, I only knew about solar panels, inverters, and everything around them in theory. But after building this, I've really gotten to know solar tech inside and out. I can't say it any other way. I'm going to miss the car. It's super efficient, has a lot of power, all-wheel drive, and over 500 horsepower. It's really fun. However, if I were to buy a new car now, I would definitely think twice. I've heard many times that you should separate the artist from the work, but what Elon Musk is doing right now is just not acceptable. Buying an expensive car is a small vote for the change you want to see in the world. And when that vote gets used to promote an agenda that has nothing to do with our democracy, everyone should think twice. This Tesla will now be used as a company car for Charge X, because I no longer need to drive long distances, and I already found the car fitting my needs, which I will show you in a later video. Till then, have a nice day and take care.